this point, you should have all of your pattern pieces traced, and then you will go ahead and cut out all around the area that you have traced in using paper scissors. So we are going to go ahead and get started with cutting out the pattern out from your fabric, and what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have your fabric oriented in the same way that I do. Basically what that means is you need to locate your selvage edge and your cut edge. So when you get the fabric off of the bolt from the store, there's a fold over here where the fabric is folded in half. It's doubled over. The two edges that are parallel, so there's the fold over there. The two edges right here that are parallel, that is the selvage. And depending on the brand of fabric that you get, sometimes the selvage will have something printed on it right out here. Sometimes it is like a wide white band, so it doesn't even look like the rest of the fabric. And other times, sort of like this one, it just kind of continues out. You don't even really see the difference, but you can feel the difference. The selvage is curling in towards the wrong side of the fabric, and it does not have any cut edges. So the other two ends of your fabric, those are your cut ends. So that was when you went and bought the fabric and they opened up the bolt and they cut this separate from the rest of the fabric that you weren't keeping. So this up here on this end, and then this over here, these are your two cut ends. So this on this side, from these edges, those are your cut edges. And then this and that are your selvages and your fold. And that's really important that you locate that. If you can't find that on your fabric, just give me a holler and I will come over and help you out so that you make sure that you cut your fabric out in the right way. Okay, so once you know where those things are, you're going to start unfolding your fabric to fit your first pattern piece. And this is a really great trick, especially when using knit fabrics. Because knit fabrics are made to be either 55 or 60 inches across the width of the bolt, it gives you a lot more width of fabric to work with than if you are using woven fabrics, like maybe if you're making a quilt or something. So we lay out the pattern in a little bit of a different way in order to save fabric, okay? So I'm gonna take one of these selvage edges and open the fabric up a little bit. And then I'm gonna take this selvage edge and I'm going to fold it in. And I want the selvage right here to be parallel with my new fold line. And what I'm doing here is I'm folding it in just enough so that I can fit my pattern piece on to this space right here without running into the selvage, okay? So the side that said fold on it, I am going to slide that up against the folded edge. I'm also going to scooch that pattern piece as high up towards the top as I can. I don't really want to scoot this over anymore because I would be cutting into the selvage and I don't want to do that. And you may notice that I flipped my pattern piece over so the back of it's showing. If I did it this way, then the fold would not be touching the fold line. And then if I did it this way, I noticed that some of my flowers look like they were kind of upside down in that direction. So I'm going to flip my pattern piece over, wrong side. It really doesn't matter. And I'm going to lay it down on that fold, okay? The other thing that I have with me right now are these planters. I'm just going to use those as pattern weights. You can buy pattern weights, but I just use whatever I have laying around. I've used staplers and jars and whatever I can find. It just needs to put a pressure on the fabric so that while you're cutting, you don't have the fabric shift around on you. I can also go ahead right now and lay out one of my flounce sleeve pattern pieces. Since I've already got the fabric laying here, I'm gonna need to cut two of those. So I can go ahead and get that all laid out. And then the next thing that you need is a really sharp pair of sewing shears. I have designated shears in my classroom that are for fabric, and then I have scissors that are for paper. And I just ask that you try not to ever cross over and use paper with these fabric shears. But the proper way to cut is to be standing ideally. to, instead of trying to pick up and hold the fabric up off the table, as much as you can, leave it laying flat on the table, and then slide the point of your shears underneath it, and just stay even with the outside edge of your pattern piece. Now normally when I'm at home, I do this on a high cutting table so that I don't have to bend over awkwardly. But just to show you, these are the tables that we have in class. I'll use that as an example. So I've just trimmed off that little piece. Now I'm going to go up underneath the shoulder and begin cutting away here. So hopefully you get the idea, and you'll just trim right next to that pattern piece all the way down. Now when you get right here where it says fold, you are not cutting on the fold. Anytime you see this symbol with the box around the edge of the pattern piece and it says fold, that just means your pattern is going to be placed on the fold. It's not going to be cut. If I were to cut this piece in half, then the back of my shirt would have two pieces. It would have a seam right down the back. So the way this pattern was made was for it to be one piece on the back that just opens up. So this is showing you half of the back, and then the other half is on the other side of the fold, okay? Sometimes patterns will say even cut on fold, and that really confuses people because it makes it look like you're supposed to cut on the fold, but it's actually that same symbol, meaning lay the pattern piece down on the fold and then cut out around everywhere else, okay? So I'm going to continue to cut this piece out, and I'll meet back with you in a second. All right, so your next step is to slide what you've already cut out of the way. And for now, let's just take the piece that you just cut and fold it up with the fabric. That way you remember which piece it is, front or back. And we'll just set that off to the side. Now I do need to reuse the flounce pattern, so I'm just gonna leave those pieces sitting off to the side. Then I'm gonna open up my fabric. I like to trim as I go, so I trim these little tails off. Now if they're really big, you can leave them on because you might be able to use it for a neckband. But those are all really narrow scraps, so I'm gonna set those off to the side. Then I'm gonna bring the fabric back over. I'm gonna fold it up again. Now I don't have a selvage anymore, I've cut it off. So what I need to do is I need to look for these grain lines in here, and I need to make sure that my fabric is folded over evenly. There's no wrinkles or bumps, and then it's not going off to one side. And again, I just need to have it folded over just enough to make sure that my pattern piece will fit on here. And seems pretty good. There's a little wrinkle down here, so I just want to make sure everything is parallel. Again, I'm going to slide this as close to the top as I can. I don't want to waste any of this fabric. It's very close to that edge, and I can go ahead and put weights down on it again, just like I did for the back piece, okay? Now I've got my flounce piece I'm going to lay out one more time, and I'm going to lay it right here. And then the other thing that I can try to do, let's see if this is going to work. Okay, it's not long enough. It is wide enough, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my neckband piece. Even though the directions don't tell me to cut it on the fold, I'm going to fold that piece in half, lay it right here, double check to make sure I've got 2 layers, which I do. And for that, I might go ahead and pop a pin in to hold it in place. But then that allows me to have the least waste possible with my fabric. So then I'm going to have this nice big scrap left over that I could use for another project someday, or I could use for a headband or something. So there's a lot we can do with those extra scraps. So now you'll just repeat the same process, cut out the front piece, the other flounce or whatever sleeve you're using, and the neckband. After cutting out all the pieces, you can take the pattern weights, move those off to the side. You don't need those anymore. What you do need now is your bag for the class. Now inside of it, you should have about 15 of these clips. Those actually belong in the classroom, so you'll use them throughout the class and then return them on our last day. But they're really great to use with knit fabrics instead of using pins, so I highly recommend these. You can get them on Amazon. Inside your bag, you should also have 5 labels. Now you may not need all of them. If you are not attaching a sleeve, you can just get rid of those pieces. But what you're gonna be doing with the other pieces, or the sleeves if you're using them, is you're gonna be taping them to the right side of your fabric. So before we get any further, I'm gonna go show you with this first piece. So this was my front bodice. The bodice is the shirt part. It's like if you're making a dress, there's the bodice and the skirt. It's gonna be the chest and the waist and all of that area. So this is called the front bodice. It says front right here. I don't need my pattern piece anymore, but I need the piece that I've cut out. So my fabric is really easy to tell which is the right side and which is the wrong side. For me, and for any of you who have a print, the right side is the bright, bold side that has the pattern or the design printed onto it. And the wrong side of the fabric is the inside, where it's a little bit more dull and you can't really see the flowers as well. So on my fabric, it is pretty easy to tell. What I would do is I would find my little piece that says front bodice. So I've got front bodice, I've got my little tag, and I'm just gonna take a piece of tape and tape that piece there. I don't do this when I'm sewing normally because I can tell the difference between front and back, but when you're first getting started with sewing with knits, it can be a really good idea to label your pieces, not only to know which piece is which front and back, but also which is right side and wrong side. In the fashion business, they don't even call it right side, wrong side. They call it the face. So the face is the right side or the front, and then the wrong side is the back. So in fashion, it's the face and the back of the fabric. All right, so I have labeled my front piece on the right side of the fabric, and I've got that taped on there. Then I'm going to grab my flounce. Now it doesn't matter, these are identical, so I'm just gonna get one of the pieces that says sleeve, and I also wanna make sure it's on the right side. The reason I need to do that is because when we start sewing, we're gonna attach pieces right sides together. And you do that so that when you finish your garment, you have all of the right sides on the outside with no unfinished seams on the outside. And on the inside of your garment, you have all of your wrong sides with all of your seams. So that's why it's important to have a good understanding of what the right side and wrong side is. Here's my other sleeve piece. I'm gonna tape it down. And then now I have that back piece that I had originally folded up just to kind of keep it out of the way. Now I can set that pattern piece off to the side, and I'm going to take my label for my back bodice and I'm going to tape it down. And then I'm going to take my neckband and I'm going to take my pins out that I had in it. Put those back in my pin cushion. And now there's my neckband, and I've got the neckband piece on the right side. And I'm gonna tape that down, okay? So I have all my pieces. Now I'm just gonna fold those up and put them inside my bag. So this should conclude our first lesson where we are getting our pattern pieces ready and our pattern pieces cut. Oh, actually what I would probably do if I were you, because you'll probably wanna make this again, fold all your pattern pieces up as well. You could even put your name on it and what size, and then stick it inside of the bag. So then you have all the stuff that you'll need for the next class all ready to go. Now, if you don't know how to tell right from wrong on your fabric, I'm gonna zoom in here real quick and show you how you might be able to tell. So I don't know how well it'll show up on film, but over here you have the selvage. So I just cut off a little scrap. Remember earlier I mentioned that the selvage edge will kind of roll towards the wrong side. So that's one way of telling where the selvages are. So this is rolling towards the wrong side, and I'm gonna flip it back over now to the right side. I'm gonna get real close here and zoom in. So here's the selvage. Parallel to the selvage, you should see a bunch of parallel grain lines. So when I stretch it out, you can kind of see those parallel, it almost looks like ribbing, like if you had a ribbed sweater. So they're running parallel to the selvage. And that's how you can tell that's the front or the right side of your fabric if you don't have a print. Now if we flip that over, so now I'm on the wrong side. Now over here's my selvage. And these are a little bit more easy to see. Now you can see lines going perpendicular to the selvage are on the wrong side of your fabric. If you have any questions about which is your right side or wrong side, I can help you. And honestly, some fabrics, it's hard to tell. If it is hard to tell, if you can tell any distinction at all between the two sides, just choose which one you want to use. It's up to you whether, you know, which part of it's on the front and which is on the back. But you do want to try to be consistent with it, and whatever you choose as the right side, you continue to use as the right side for the whole project.